The last part that's relevant is in terms of retrieval, which is that retrieval typically is very painful for people. And many, many people who've been through life-threatening or other kinds of traumatic experiences don't want to think about them. They don't want to talk about them. They don't want to remember them. So they haven't. They've made a concerted effort, maybe for years, to not think about that experience. I said earlier, one of the things that enhances memory is practice. If every time you think of something, you push it away, every reminder that comes up, you push it away, or you get overwhelmed and shut down, your ability to recall is going to be impaired. And that's really relevant also when we repeatedly interview. We repeatedly ask people about the same experience. We may be in the first interview forcing someone for the first time to kind of piece together as best they can this puzzle. And they may not do a very good job of it in the first interview. It may be very fragmented and distorted. In the second interview, maybe it's a little bit easier because they've thought about it. Third interview, and so on. But in general, what we see for many trauma survivors is memories that are sensory, that are not detailed in the way that we want them to be, and that are not focused on peripheral details, certainly. So what this means in terms of people's capacity to describe what's happened to them, to talk about it, is that they often cannot do it in the way that we want them to do it. They can't do it in a coherent narrative, detailed way. They can't answer specific questions. They can't get at that particular piece of the puzzle. One of the other things that's really important, I think, to understand here is that it not only affects the experience of fear and terror, not only affect this memory center, but one of the other areas of the brain that's been shown to be influenced or potentially changed by trauma is an area of the brain that has to do with expressive communication. So there's two parts of your brain to do with speech. One is your ability to understand the words that are being said to you, and the other is your ability to produce words in a coherent way. So that part of the brain, the second part, the ability to make sentences, essentially, to speak and to verbalize, can also be affected by trauma in a way that leaves people with something that we would call wordless terror. So as I said before, what's happening? You're interviewing someone about a rape or torture, and they're there. They're actually living it as it's happening in the interview. They're remembering it in far more detail than we'd want them to, because it feels to them as if it's happening right now. It's a unique kind of memory that's called a flashback. Very different than the way you remember what you ate for dinner last night, right? When you think about that, you don't taste it, you just remember it. But you might interview somebody about one of these experiences, and they're there, they're feeling it, they're going through it again, but what they cannot do is articulate it. They can't put it into words.